Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. Faith, it's a powerful thing. Hebrews 11, verse 6, reading from the Amplified Version, says, "But without faith it is impossible to walk with God and please Him. For whoever comes near to God must necessarily believe that God exists and that He rewards those who earnestly and diligently seek Him." Let us have a conversation about faith. That simple, straightforward, direct, uncomplicated experience that God delights in seeing activated in the lives of His children. Faith is exciting and provides intrigue. Faith is good for the common man as well as royalty. Faith brings us all to the level platform of acknowledging that there is one who has power over all of us, and that power can work for our good in a million different ways. Faith is still the same regardless of your color, class, ethnicity, social, or economic background. Faith, when activated, is a delight to God because it brings mortal man in relation to a supreme God, and He places value on that relation. It is the very reason that He created man, for us to have relationship with Him. Today, we will look at Abraham, one of the faith heroes in the Bible. Abraham is a man from a culture of idolatry, but a heart that was searching for the true God. In Hebrews 11, we see three descriptive statements about Abraham in particular and the faith he practiced, and a fourth faith framework in which his wife played the major role. As we explore this resume of faith, let us always bear in mind that when faith is activated, God is pleased. Abraham's first act of faith is demonstrated in obedience. Abraham heard God speak to him. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household to a land I will show you." What did Abraham do? Genesis 12 verse 4 tells us that Abraham went as the Lord told him. In the Hebrews 11 passage, it says that Abraham obeyed and went even though he did not know where he was going. There is your faith lesson, my friend. Blind trust that is expressed in obedience. We have no record of Abraham and God being friends before. We have no record of Abraham having any good reason to believe God, but he obeyed a God who he did not know. He did what a God said he should do with no details with which to work with. He moved out to go to a place that God promised him that he had not seen before. Abraham could have asked a ton of what ifs, but instead he obeyed. Guess what? That pleased God. Abraham's second act of faith lived in the place God planned to give him and his descendants, although God had not yet given it to him. He lived there and became wealthy. He acquired property, and he became a respected man in the community. But he was not a citizen. He was an immigrant in the land God had not yet given him. That is patience. Abraham heard God made him a promise to give him this land, and he waited on God. He did not pressure God to have the handing over ceremony. He did not remind God of his promise. He simply lived out his faith in patience. God said it, Abraham believed it. The joint act of faith involved Abraham and his wife Sarah. Sarah was infertile, and in any case, she had long passed her childbearing age because she knew that God would keep his promise of giving them a son together who would be the one through whom the scores of descendants would come. No, you don't understand Sarah's faith. She believed God's promise. The woman became a first-time mother at age 90, and her husband, the father of the baby, was 100 years old. Wrap your mind around that. An elderly woman getting pregnant by an even older man and giving birth to a son at an age when their peers were great-grandparents. The Bible describes her husband as good as dead at the time of conception. God has promised, and it is taking forever to come true. At what point do you give up and acknowledge that maybe God has changed his mind, or worse, that you did not really hear from God? What practical reason did Sarah have to continue expecting to get pregnant? We never read of any miscarriages, so it is safe to assume that they were trying, but she conceived just this one time and gave birth. Faith demands that you never stop believing God. The third and final act of faith of Abraham is seen in Hebrews 11:17. God tested him and he passed the test. By now, Abraham and his wife Sarah had their promised son Isaac. God asked Abraham to sacrifice a son, the son that God had promised him to be the one through whom God would bring the offsprings. God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac long before Isaac had a child. Rather than question God, Abraham reasoned that God can raise the dead, and so he willingly acted on God's request. That is faith, being willing to pass the God test. Faith is exciting. It requires obedience. It requires patience. It demands you to never stop believing. It expects you to pass the test. The result? Abraham's descendants got the land more than 400 years later. Abraham and Sarah had their son Isaac, and Abraham's son Isaac became the patriarch of the great nation of Israel. This faith thing works. Faith demands obedience. It demands patience. It demands never letting go of God's promise. It demands the confidence that you will pass the tests of faith, because in so doing, you are pleasing God. And when your faith pleases God, faith produces results. When your faith acknowledges God for who he is, it is then that your faith is rewarded.